Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Create It and Crush It Masterclass. We are at number 7, and we have Emily Kristofferson with us today. Hi, Emily.
Hi, Lacey.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we are talking about 5 keys to a profitable launch. I'm so excited to share this with you guys. Emily is the perfect person to teach us this. Emily is a business coach, a marketing strategist, and an expert on execution. She helps passionate entrepreneurs to cut through all the business building information, because it's like drinking out of a fire hose, right? That they've been hoarding, and create a really personalized business strategy. She has been behind the scenes from some of the biggest online coaches and businesses over the course of 5 years. She knows what works, knows what doesn't work, and knows why it doesn't work or works. So she is sharing all of that with us today. And if you have any questions, if you're watching the replay, you can post them in the Facebook group on this the video thread, and Emily will answer those for you too. So hopefully you won't have, you'll know exactly what to do to have a profitable launch and know exactly what you need to do. And you'll just come to Emily to ask her questions on how to move forward with that and get it set up. So let's dive in.
Okay.
All right. So the first thing I like to ask, just because it's why I created this masterclass and it's really important to me, is like, how has community and support helped you as an online business owner? How has that helped you grow? How has that helped you build? Love to just chat about that for a minute, and then we'll dive right into the keys to a profitable launch.
Sure. Yeah. So support has been a really big part of my business. When I started my business 5 years ago, I really didn't know anyone else. There wasn't active Facebook groups like there are now. And so I was kind of just doing it on my own, and I had family members who really weren't sure what I was doing and weren't totally supportive or on board with my ideas. And so it was hard for the first year or two, but once I started getting more clients and getting to know them, and I also formed an accountability buddy, a relationship with another person who was in online business who lives kind of close to me, but we've never actually met. And so we had talked probably the last 3 or 4 years every other week. And so she was a really big part in terms of support. And so having someone else who understood and knew what I was, knew what I was doing or knew what I was all about was really helpful. The other part too is 3 years ago, I decided to hire my first coach. And it was quite an investment in terms of finances, but also taking my business in a different direction and really stepping up and claiming my business. So before that, I kind of saw myself as a freelancer, and I was making money, on the side, and I didn't really see myself as the CEO of a business. And so that really was what helped shift.
I love that. And I think it's so important that you mentioned like the different kinds of support, right? Like you get a certain kind of support from like an accountability buddy or a biz bestie. You get a different level of support from a coach. And like, when we come together as a community and we can get support in different ways, that's when it's so important. Even a master class like this, where you're getting support from someone else's area of expertise and applying it to your business, is so important. So thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. Yeah, I find that a lot of times people think either support of a virtual assistant or a coach. And I really have had support, from those 2 areas, but also kind of beyond that. So even at home, getting everyone on board with busier times or having help. So I have a cleaning lady who comes every other week. I have meals that come every week, 2 or 3 dinners that usually come. And so all of these little things go to allow me to focus more on my business and also focus more on those things that really matter. And so support is such a big topic, so much beyond just having a coach and having a virtual
Absolutely.
assistant.
And, being available for it and letting it show up for you, right? Like, I love that you talked about the support at home, because I think sometimes that's what we forget as entrepreneurs, is we're like so willing to invest in all these areas of our business, but like at home, we're like, oh, I can't possibly invest in whatever, meals or cleaning lady. That feels like such a luxury, but it's like, usually that's like a lot cheaper of an investment, and it really helps you show up in a different way. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I would die without my cleaning lady. But yes, it's so important. Yes. Okay. Let's dive in. Well, first, can you just share with everyone like your story a little bit? You mentioned like pivoting in your business. Like, I would love for you to just share with them what that looks like and what you do and how you have been behind the scenes in a lot of businesses, and now you're sharing from the front lines.
Yes. So I started my business 5 years ago, and I fell into it somewhat unintentionally. I had been following different life coaches, and I learned about a virtual assistant technical training program. And I took that. And what I realized quickly was that I was more of an online business manager. And so my clients were telling me that I was the COO, or I was the VP of operations, and I was really taking charge in the business. And so we became partners. And quickly what happened is I got a lot of clients, and I had to make the decision of whether I wanted to keep those clients or decide to leave my job. So within a year, I decided to leave my job, which a lot of people thought was crazy because it was supposed to be the perfect job for me at the time. And it was, but I wasn't happy and I wasn't fulfilled. And I really wanted to be able to design a life on my own terms, be there for my son, who at that time he was just starting school. So he was just starting kindergarten, and, and really do what I love in a way that was creative. And that was something that was missing from my job. So when I started on my own, I had lots of clients, and I was acting as their business manager. And what I saw behind the scenes was the power of launching. And so launching really was what made a change in their business, whether it was someone who was working with one-to-one clients and felt like they were burning out, or they didn't have any more space or time or energy to take on any additional clients, and they were wanting to offer a group or something more leveraged. But I also work with entrepreneurs who are more at the beginning stages of their business and using launches to just take that leap forward, whether that was attracting more one-on-one clients, whether that was creating passive income or a product, lots of different reasons. And I saw the power of launching behind the scenes.
Excuse me. I love that you mentioned launching for one-on-one clients, passive products, etc. Because I think that like sometimes when we think launch, we only think group program, right? And really, like, you could be launching anything. It's just like, are you being strategic about it? Do you know what steps you're taking, right?
Right. Yeah. And, when I use the term launching, I like to equate it to just getting buzz or getting an idea out into the world or to those people who need it. And so it can be launching a course, like we said, a group program is usually what comes to people's mind, but it could be a book, it could be an event, it could even be a free offer. And so launching works in all of those different ways. So from behind the scenes, I've seen, everything in terms of the very beginning to the very large business and using launching in their business. And so from there, really, I realized is that what I'm really good at and what my clients would tell me is I'm really good at creating steps, sequences, and systems, whether that was around launching, which was the primary activity in their business, or list building or operations. And so what I've done is I've also started consulting. And so I've been consulting for the last couple of years. And that is, working with more women. So it's been able to help me increase the impact and also help more women in the process. Because I also ran into the situation in my business that I only had so many hours in the day, or I only wanted to work so much, and I couldn't take anyone else on. And there was the period of time where it was about a year and a half where I couldn't take anyone else on, even though I had a team myself. And so that was a way for me to be able to reach more women and help more people in the process.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so excited for you to share with us today. I know you have so much experience. You've done launches. You've done them for other people. You've been in 6-figure launches. Like, I feel like people think that's like the holy grail, right? So you've done it all, from the free product launch to the big 6-figure launch. So let's dive in. What is the first key to a profitable launch? Like, where do we start?
Sure. So the first key is with your offer. And that's really the place to start. And I know Lacey, that I had a challenge last month that was all around your offer. And the whole idea is that you don't want to create an offer in isolation and then fall in love with the idea. You actually need to be interacting with people. And so getting their feedback. For example, Facebook groups is an excellent way to be interacting with your audience and kind of get feedback and confirmation of the ideas in terms of whether you have a free offer or whether you have a paid offer in mind. So you want to start there, and each offer needs to solve a problem. So you need to know the problem that you're going to solve through the offer. And you also need to know that the people who your ideal clients who are going to take you up on this offer have that same problem. So you're kind of doing a double check or a validation through this, let's say, market research. And so it can be as simple as interacting in a Facebook group. It could be having conversations. I think that's the best way. If you have an idea, whether it's for a group program, a freebie, anything in your business, actually bouncing that idea off of people who would actually be interested. So those people could be just people in your group. They could be past clients. They could be current clients. They could just be people who really get or understand what your business is about. And having conversations with them to talk about the problem that you solve, the solution you hope to provide, and logistically what it will look like. So whether that's going to be over 12 weeks, over 8 weeks, one-to-one, a small group, there's so many options in terms of format, but getting their preference. And you want to have more than one conversation. So you probably want to talk to 3 people, 5 people. And from there, then you're going to look and see what the commonalities are. So you don't necessarily need to go with, what a certain person said. You're also thinking in terms of your own expertise and what will get a result through that offer. But the point is that you really want to actually be talking to real people, getting their feedback, and using that to form your offer before you go ahead with any kind of
I love that, because I think sometimes we're so surprised by stuff like that. And like you said, don't come up with it in isolation and then get so attached to it, because we have all been there, right? Where we're so attached to an idea and then we're like, why is no one buying this? Is the best idea I've ever had. And it's because you didn't ask. This happened to me recently, actually, is that I was thinking of offering a small group program, and I thought we would focus a lot on strategy. And when I talked to my audience a lot more, they were like, nah, I really need support to get it done. I need the executional piece. I need support to know what I'm doing each week, and then someone holding me accountable to show up and do it. So they were more interested in the step after strategy. And I'm so glad I asked them, because if I hadn't, I would have totally done something different. So I love this point is never put out this big offer without making sure you are positive that that's what they need, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. And what I see sometimes is someone will have created an offer in isolation, and then they've spent months creating it. So for example, the program, they've already gone ahead and started creating modules, and they've spent months. And that's a really dangerous place to be, because you do not know whether you just wasted a lot of time. And it's so much, it's so much easier when you create an interaction with people. So a lot of my clients will just start with the outline. So we'll have an idea of modules or steps or some type of sequence to get the result, and then that's it. So they'll launch, and then they have people who have bought it, and it's so much easier then, because you have a built-in deadline, and you also have real people. So you can kind of customize or be flexible, at least the first time that you go through a particular offer.
I think that's such a good point. And you can also change it as you go, right? So you have the opportunity to be super flexible around it. So if they're asking questions and you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even include this question, you get to change that as opposed to being like, well, I guess their question just doesn't fit in here. You really get to make sure they get results because you're making it applicable to them in the moment, right?
Right. Right now, I'm working with a client who has actually had a group program that she's offered several times, and we worked together to launch it 3 times. And she wants to turn it into home study, and she's going through the testing process again because it doesn't, it's not the same in terms of a self-study or independent course. So she wants to see where those questions are, or where people are having, trouble or need more support when it is a version that's different than the live group. And so you can do that in all aspects of your business. Even with a freebie, if you're putting together a free gift to grow your email list, you can get feedback and then see if it's clear or if people, know what they're supposed to do, and really get a lot of valuable insight before you go to all the trouble of finishing and putting out there and then having it possibly,
So give us some specific examples, how, say I'm new at this and I want to launch, how would I ask people for feedback? What's a great couple ways to do that?
So the first way is having that market research conversation. So inviting someone to a Skype call or a local coffee date and talking to them just for 10 or 15 minutes and asking questions, presenting what your idea is and then asking questions. So do they have any hesitations, or would they buy this? Or what is the problem that they need solved? How is that problem presenting itself in different areas of their life or in their business or their health or relationships? And learning a little bit more. So what have they already tried? What has worked? What hasn't? What would they pay anything for, or what would their ideal situation or scenario be? So getting more information just by talking. And the reason why I like having the conversation is when someone gives you an answer, then you can follow up with another question and then dive deeper. So an alternative to a conversation would be a survey. So if you already have an audience, so let's say you have an email list or you have a Facebook group or even some type of following on social media, then you could put together a survey. The only downside in terms of the survey is that you can't ask those follow-up questions, so you can't go deeper. But surveys really work. So I've done survey. I do surveys regularly to my email list around different topics. And in terms of best practices, you just want to make it quick and easy. So not a lot of room where someone has to type something out. Make it really quick in terms of just checking off boxes or having multiple choice, that type of thing. And you can also increase the number of people by offering some incentive. So clients of mine have done, time with them or a product or some type of bonus that they already have put together. Maybe it was a class that they had done before, a recording that they could provide, or even a gift card, so $25 to iTunes or Amazon. Some type of incentive will help to get more people to answer your survey.
So one thing I want to point out that you said, because I think it's really important, I think it's something a lot of people miss, is you mentioned when you're surveying them, that you talk big picture questions and really specific, like, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think about it? And I think sometimes people do one or the other, right? So they're either asking like these huge big picture questions, like, what do you want to change in your business? And they want to hear productivity or something like that. And then they don't get that answer. So they get super confused and they're like, I don't know what my clients want from me, whatever. But if you were to go to them and say like, hey, I'm doing a course on productivity and I need to know what you think about XYZ, that's totally different, right?
Right.
So that's really good, is like the big.
Another point in terms of surveys that I want to make mention of is sometimes I'll see people post a survey in different Facebook groups and they're really not sure who it is who's answering. And they're definitely not sure whether that person would be their ideal client. So if you're going to be providing a survey, you want to make sure you have some understanding of who it is that you want to be working with. So who it is who would be appropriate to answer that survey or appropriate for the offer, and make sure that the people who are answering it are, are in line. So if I were to do a survey, I talk about pretty much just 3 topics, and people are already interested in those topics since they're on my email list. And so if I send out a survey, I'm pretty sure that the people are interested in what it is, that my offer would be around, since it would be similar.
So good, right? Because that's
topics.
The quickest way to get yourself feeling defeated or confused or frustrated or all of those things when you're A, asking the wrong people, and B, asking like a non-specific question. So that's great advice. I love, love, love that. Okay. So number 1, survey your audience. Make sure your offer is actually what they need. What's number 2? Oh, yeah.
So I just want to add one other thing. There's a couple other suggestions that I have that are somewhat automated in terms of research and getting feedback. So the first is when people sign up for your freebie, having some email or a question within email that you already have around what it is that they're struggling with. And so I did this for a long time. When someone would sign up for my free gift, the email that they would get that delivers, I would ask what it is that they're struggling around the topics that I was covering. And I got lots of responses, and they were very interesting, and they helped guide different free offers that I put together. So I had different workshops. And it was interesting to see the common themes in terms of who I was attracting. And some of the topics that they gave me weren't things that I would help them on, but it was still interesting. So having that part of your sequence is a really easy way to learn more about the people who are getting on your list and what they need help with. The other is looking at your client intake forms. So when you're starting to work with clients, usually you have them fill something out, and it could be that it's before they talk to you, so before you have a sales conversation, or it could be when they start to work with you, you might have some type of intake form. Looking at those forms and seeing what their answers are can also, really help in terms of what it is that, most people who are just in talking with you, or people who are working with you, what are those common themes, the common problems that they have, common solutions that they're looking for, and what it is that they're.
That's so good, right? Because they're hiring you. So they're hiring you for these specific things. So if you know that, like, how can you incorporate that into other offers you're doing? Because this is what people are hiring you for, right?
And they're using, you can use their language as well. You're seeing what language they use.
Love that. Okay, cool. Thank you. Those are great.
So key two. So key two is what numbers are important in your launch. And so if we're talking about a profitable launch, of course, revenue and expenses are important, but there are other numbers that are just as important. And so what I mean by that is you want to look at the number of leads or the number of people who are seeing your offer. So a lot of times we have the expectation, like someone will talk to me and they'll say, I want a 6-figure launch. And that sounds great, but we need to break it down and see if that's reasonable or realistic for where you're at in your business. And of course, there's always exceptions, but the reality is that if you have just started your business and you have a smaller email list, you have a smaller Facebook group, only a certain percentage of people are even going to see your offer, and only a percentage of people will then be interested in your offer at the time that you're offering it. And so just looking at the number of people who it is who are in your audience. And that doesn't need to be limited to your email list. It doesn't need to be limited to your Facebook group, but just looking at how many people are coming to your website, how many people are seeing a sales page, how many people are going to opt-in page, and then realizing that only a percentage of those people will be interested in what it is that you have to offer. So kind of, looking at your goal and looking at the reality of your numbers. And of course, you can always change your numbers. So you can always be growing your email list or getting yourself in front of more people through the launching process. But if you have a goal, you just want to look at and see, am I setting myself up for a disappointment, or, what are my expectations here? So, for example, if someone says to me, I had a prospect actually say this to me. She said that she had 170 people on her email list and she was putting together a dating program. She's a dating coach. And she thought that, 150 out of 170 people on her list would sign up for this program. Yes, she loved the program. And it was program, it was that only a percentage of people on your email list open any of the emails that you send out, and only a percentage of them are going to be interested in, for example, that dating program at that time.
You're so right that it's about not just the program interest, but the time piece too. Is this the right time? So I think that's a really good point too, is even if we check the boxes of ideal client, program that would be good for them, something that they want, there's still another box there, right?
Right. Yeah. And the reality is that people on your email list, or anyone who you have a relationship with, they're at different stages. So everyone is, maybe they're a little bit more warmed up. Maybe there's a little bit more trust built. Maybe they don't need it at that time. So they're not, that's not their exact problem at that time. Or maybe there are different reasons in their own personal life or business that they can say, now is not the right time. The other reality too is that when we launch something, there's different stages. And the first stage is those people who would probably say yes to anything that you offer. So I like to call them the early adopters. And so almost anything that you put out, if it's new, they're going to jump on it. Because there are those type of people who, if something's new or something's innovative, they're going to be interested. But the reality is that most people need to see an offer more than once. And they also probably need to see some social proof or some testimonials. So you never want to launch something just once. You want to launch it more than once. And when you launch it the next time, then you can leverage what you've already done. So there'll be people who have already seen it, and maybe they were interested, but they were on the fence, and for whatever reason, they didn't decide to jump. When you launch it again, those people are no longer early adopters. They're the wide majority. And so they're going to now see that people have gone through your process, and now you have social proof. So you have testimonials, recommendations from people who have gone through it, a case study, that type of thing. And now you're going to have more people who are interested. So you never want to just launch once. And that's part of the whole, the whole process. So when I'm talking about growing an online business, I like to tell my clients that how it works is you launch and then you grow or nurture your community, and then you launch again, and then you grow and nurture your community and you launch again, and so on and so on.
Like you're improving each time, you're tweaking it, you're learning more instead of like always starting at square one. So it's kind of like, even if you're a newbie at this and you're just launching for the first time, know that there's so much room to work on this, to improve, right? Like, I think about like the Money Bitch Boot Camp, right? Denise Duffield Thomas, like she's created this amazing course. She's built a multi-million-dollar business off of one course. She's improved that so much over time. She's improved her launch so much over time. So kind of like, don't be afraid to start where you are. Like, you don't need that 6-figure launch out of the gate. You need to get a launch under your belt so you can continue to nurture your community and grow, right?
Right. And through going through the launch process, it is going to inform you. You're going to learn more about how your audience reacts, and it's going to make it better for the next time. And, people see someone like Denise and they see this kind of end product, or people will see Marie Forleo, for example, and they'll think that they need to have a launch like that. So they maybe need a video series or they need to have affiliates. And the reality is that we're seeing, someone who has been launching the same program or even different programs for years. And that's not where you start. That's not the stage that you're at. And you don't need to have those things in order to have a successful launch. You can build to that if that's where you want to go, but it's definitely not.
Amen. Give yourself a break, guys, right? Like we all start somewhere. And if you don't ever start, you'll never get to that Denise Duffield Thomas place, Marie Forleo place. Like, you have to start somewhere. Love it.
Yeah. I say if you're considering a launch right now, then you're ready. Whether you feel like you are, you're never going to be in a place where, you're ready. It is that you really need to just jump in and launch, and it's going to get better. And it's not going to be as scary as people have said. There's a lot of myths and misconceptions around launching hard or, exhausting. It really can be what you make it. You don't need to look at these larger gurus or figures in the whole online space and think that you need to have a launch like that.
Perfect. So good. Okay. So know your audience. Be realistic about your launch plan and know your numbers, right? Cool. What's number 3?
Yeah. So number 3 is having a plan. And so once you've had a chance to look at your offer, you look at your numbers, you have goals, now you need to have a plan to back that up. And the two extremes that I see are people who, they'll contact me and say, I want to launch next week or next month, and they want to jump in and do it. And that's where you have someone who starts to feel overwhelmed, is exhausted, where you kind of get this whole myth of launching needs to be like staying up all night, pulling my hair out, that type of thing. And most of the time, it's because someone jumped in and they didn't have a plan. And then I see on the other hand, people who plan out, way, way too far in advance, and almost like they're acting out of fear or procrastination. And it's a lot of, similarities to the person who spends so much time creating their offer and then waits to get it out. So you want to find a balance between the two. And people will ask me a lot about how long it takes to plan a launch. And I like to say anywhere between 4, 8, 12 weeks. And a lot of that depends on your own schedule. So if you can commit, half a day every week to work towards your launch, then you can absolutely make it work. It doesn't need to be a lot of work when you break it down, and have weekly priorities and implementation plan that way. So you kind of have to figure out what is right for you, and then also factor in what it is involved in your launch. So if you have, if you are going to do a video series, or if you're going to do several webinars, or, whatever it is in terms of your pre-launch content, then you want to factor that in. Or you want to think about how long are you going to be opening your cart for whatever it is that you're launching. And a
That's
rough
okay. Does the
guideline-
plan usually
sorry,
change
go ahead.
based on like the ticket price of the item? Like, so for example, like, do we need more time if it's a higher ticket item?
Yes. So overall, if it's longer or it's more of an investment, then you're going to need a longer launch. And what I mean by that is if it's over $500, that's kind of like a magic number, or over $1,000, then plans start to change. Also, if it's something like, so let's say it's under $500
Okay.
and it's 4 to 6 weeks, then that can be a launch that's, 4 weeks. If it's something where it's a 3-month program, a 6-month program, or even the amount of investment. So if someone is going to work with you one-on-one, there's more of an investment, likely financially, but also in terms of intimacy. And so then you may need a longer launch.
They need to like know you more.
You're working with someone. There has to be more of a relationship built there. And of course, there are ways, to get around that or to build trust, quicker than some others, and you can factor them into your launch. But that's kind of like
that's awesome. That's so helpful
in terms of yeah. So if someone's looking to launch, I look and see, okay, what is it that they have in terms of time and also support. And so within your plan, that's where support comes in. Because if you do have someone who's helping you, even if it's with, setting up the shopping cart or setting up a freebie, the different technical aspects, then you can run with a launch so much faster. And I didn't realize this until I started consulting. And it was the clients who had someone on their team or they were fairly tech savvy themselves that were able to progress really quick. And so that's part of it, is considering what type of support you have and then what amount of time you have to invest in your launch. And so that's why it's really hard to make, general recommendations, or even really hard to look at other people and follow or guess what it is that they're doing, because it's so individual. What is it that they're launching? What is it that are their strengths? Who do they have on their team? How much time do they have? So some people have more time, other people have more money to invest in their launch. And so it really is a balancing act between all of these different variables to figure out what the plan is for you and what makes sense.
I love that. Like, basically, the gist is like there is an upfront investment to a launch, right? Whether that's an investment of your time or an investment of dollars into getting a team or support. Like, we have to be realistic about the fact that like launches take upfront investment of time or dollars. So you have to be available to commit that if you want a successful launch, right? Awesome. Okay. So yes. Number 3 is being ready and having a plan. So following some of Emily's guidelines, really looking at what's working for you, how much time you have. If you need more support, what does that look like, right? Anything else on that?
Yeah. No, I think it's just the balance between actually having a plan and not having a plan. And so I think that you don't have to have everything figured out, because there is some adjustment or course correction, and you're going to be responding to your audience, but you absolutely do need to have a plan or an outline and have it be something that's solid before you jump.
I love that. That's so true too. It's like sometimes we can get too set on the plan, right? And we're like, no, I was supposed to send an email this day. And it's like, okay, but like that doesn't work anymore. So you have to change it up a little bit, right? So committing to a plan and also committing to paying attention to what's going on during the launch and if it needs to evolve with you, right? Cool. I love that.
Right. Yeah. And you can't do that if you're figuring out the next step the day before and you realize, I need another email, or I need this page set up or something like that. That doesn't allow you to look at the big picture and kind of step back and see. So that's another reason why you do want to have a plan and be
doesn't really
ahead
allow you to utilize the support, right? So if you're paying for support and you don't have a plan, it's really hard to make that work for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard for you and for them.
You're like, been there. It's hard, right? All right, cool. What's number 4?
So then the next key is using the timeless marketing strategy of urgency. And so within your plan, you want to give people a reason of why they should act now. because just as humans, we think, oh no, I'll do that later. So now is maybe not the right time in terms of money, in terms of time. Those are the common objections. So either it's money or it's the time. I don't have the time. It's not the right time now, those type of things. And so making sure that your launch plan incorporates urgency, gives people deadlines, and gives them a reason of why they want to, why they should act now. And so that could be as simple as having an early bird and having a specific deadline for that early bird, so a date. It could be that you say the next 5 people are going to get a special fast action bonus. So it can look lots of different ways, but the whole idea is that you absolutely need to give people a reason of why they need to act now. And you also want to address the time and the money objections. So those are common objections, and you need to address them somehow. So you can do that through those limiters, or you could also do that through the communication that you have in your launch. And so talking about, what it is that they're going to get and how valuable that is, so how priceless that is, and why they should want it now versus later. Because people will so that's another part of, is this going to save them time?
So what I was going to say, okay. So like part of it too is urgency in the sense of like, we always kind of assume like another email's coming or another reminder, or I'll do it next week or whatever, right? So it's kind of like, even if it's the right time and the right price for them, we still have to create urgency because it's really easy to like push that stuff off, right?
Right. Yeah. So that has to be part of your plan. And so that needs to be, so an example might be you have early bird deadline. And so you might increase your communication around that deadline. So you might send 2 emails, that day. You want to make sure that people know about it. And so building that in, somehow. And so, for example, it can be, like I mentioned, it could be the emails, it could be on your sales page, it could be the way that you have your different incentives or limiters set up. You just want to, think about why it is that they should act now, and how either time and money are going to come into their thought process. So really they're having a conversation in their head. And so as long as you understand that in terms of where they're at in the stages of, a launch. So a lot of people will decide, for example, at the very last minute. And so you need to be aware of that. And so I like to say a lot of people will jump on it as soon as you, let's say, open the cart. And then a lot of people will jump on it right before you close the cart. And so it is like a conversation that you're having with your audience, and knowing that they're probably saying to themselves something about time or money. And so you need to be addressing that.
I love that. And I love that you mentioned that like a lot of people, well, not a lot, but like, yes, people buy at the beginning, people buy at the end, right? It's like, there's always that weird point in the middle, and you have to be like available to know that that's just part of the process. So I usually see 2 things, and I'd love for you to speak to those. So the first is that when that dip occurs, people freak out, right? And they're like, oh my God, forget it. Like, I'm canceling the launch. Nobody's buying, whatever. So talk to me about that, number 1. And number 2 is the other thing I hear is that people say like, I don't want to email this much, like around the early bird deadline. I don't want to send 2 emails because people are going to drop off my list. So what are your thoughts on that?
So the first is when people start to have a little freak out, or they get discouraged because they've had a few people buy, but then they're concerned because there's only a few people and a few days have gone by and no one else has bought. And so I like to explain how it works up front so they know what to expect. But even when they go into it, I find that people, start to get a little bit nervous. And so when I'm looking at, let's say, the 2-week window that a cart is open, then I need to be strategic about when the early bird is going to end, and also having other bonuses. So it doesn't have to be all about money. It could also be that there's extra bonuses. So one thing I've done with a few launches that's worked really well is having a surprise bonus somewhere in that period. It could be before the early bird is ended. It could be right after the early bird is ended. And this is a bonus that wasn't announced through any previous emails or on a webinar or a challenge. It's not on the sales page, and it's a bonus that could go out to everyone who has already signed up for the offer, and then let's say the next 5 people, or the people who sign up that day or within 24 hours, something again with that urgency to give them a reason of why they should sign up now. So that works really well. The other thing too is that you can have different activities. So for example, you could have a Q&A call, or you could hop on, Periscope and give more content and then open up for questions around the periods that you expect.
Emily.
Sorry, pardon me. Lacey?
Oh, there we go. You're back. Okay, good. I don't know what happened. You froze for a second.
Sorry. So yeah, just in terms of different activities. So whether it was, I was saying, hopping on Periscope and giving content and then opening a Q&A, or sending out another sales email. So just being strategic about when those different communications are happening around your launch and when in that sales period. So if you expect that there'll be more of a lull, then you can schedule something in to help, because usually what happens is they'll send another sales email and then they'll get another sign up, that type of thing. And so that can help too. The other part that you said was people who are concerned about the amount of communication. And when I'm working with someone, I like to talk about how frequent they've been communicating before the launch period. So if you've been emailing your list once a month, or you've been totally inconsistent, then it doesn't make sense to send a lot of emails within a short period of time. And so you want to start way before and get your list or your audience used to this regular, consistent communication, so that when it becomes the launch period, you may increase your communication, but it's not like out of the blue, they haven't heard from you for a month or two, and then now you're sending 3 to 5 emails in a week. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that you can get really kind of smart about the number of emails and who you send the emails to. So if you're using an email marketing service, which you should be, then you could be sending emails to people who have not opened email, just people who have clicked through to a sales page. You could be sending emails to, people who had signed up for a webinar or a challenge or a free class related to your topic. So those would people who be more interested, and then you would want to email them a little bit more than, let's say, the rest of your list. So you can be really smart about how many times you're emailing people by being specific or targeting segments of your email list. And so that's one way to get around the whole idea of, I'm emailing my list so many times. And also the third way is just realize that most people understand you're in a launch period, and you've probably given, a value or content outside of just buy my thing, buy my thing, buy my thing. And so most people are understanding, and they're on your list for a reason. And so they're interested in you, what you have to offer, likely interested in the program or whatever it is that you're putting out. And
I totally agree. And I think the other thing I would say too is that if somebody's jumping off your list because you sent a few emails about something you're selling, they're not going to buy from you anyway. Like, it's okay to lose some people during a launch period, right? Because otherwise they weren't going to buy anyway. Like, they weren't like tipped over the edge by one email, but they were that close to buying. That's never how it goes. Those are never the people that jump off, right?
Yeah, I like to say that unsubscribe is a good thing, because you don't want to be paying for unsubscribes, which you are paying, based on the number of people who are on your email list. You don't want to be paying for them if they're not really interested. And so a lot of times, especially as we kind of evolve and, put out a different offer, and, I think that we all evolve in terms of the communication with our list and the things that we're offering. There are going to be people who were interested, a year ago, and it was applicable for them, but now they're no longer in that situation. And so they're not going to be interested. And that's fine. That's fine. It doesn't mean anything about us. It doesn't mean anything
so good. Okay. So number 4 is, oh my God, what was number 4? Why am I using urgency? I was like, we just took that really far and talked about a bunch of different things. Okay, so number 4 was using urgency. What's number 5?
Yeah, so number 5. So number 5 is has to do with the expense side. And so number 5 are the exact skills that you need to hone in order to launch. So I like to say that launching itself is a skill. And the great thing about that is that you can learn and you can do it and it gets better, just like, let's say, riding your bike. But there are other skills within launching and even growing your business that you need to make a decision on. Because what I find sometimes happens is someone will go in a launch and there's lots of different activities. And they'll say, okay, I have a graphics person. The graphics person is going to make all of these graphics. I have a copywriter or editor. They're going to help me with all the emails. I have a virtual assistant who's going to set up all the pages. So you have all these different team members. And then what happens is all of those expenses add up. And so when we're talking about a profitable launch, you really need to be smart in terms of the skills that you have. So what are your natural strengths, who you have on your team, and then having some type of budget. And it doesn't need to be that it is a limit. So when people hear the word budget, they have this automatic response that there's a restriction, but you definitely need to have a plan. So I like to say that you look at your support and then also look at where you have natural strengths. Because the reality is when you start launching, you can't farm out everything. You have to be involved, especially if you're, smaller. So I've worked with clients who have multi-six-figure, large businesses who have teams. And so it makes sense for them to have different people on their teams, take on some of these things. But most people don't have the luxury within their budget or know that they're going to bring in enough money in order to have a profitable launch to farm out all of these different activities to different people. And so I like to give the example of myself. So for example, I'm really tech savvy. And so I'm comfortable setting up different pages. And for me, it's just, I do it, I go through the steps, that's it. And some coaches would say, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be focused on your genius area. And I agree to that to a certain extent. But when we're talking about launching and wanting it to be profitable, then you have to think about what are my natural skills. So for me, this is, just so easy and so natural. But where I choose to invest would be more in the writing side because I'm not a natural writer. So I would write everything, but I would have someone edit it or just make it better. So I'm not exactly concise. And so then I have support in that area. So I choose to then invest in that area. And I'm not choosing to invest in another area because I'm looking at my overall goals in terms of that launch. So that may make sense for someone who is, in a similar situation, or, they don't have a large team, or they want to be, they want to make sure that the launch is profitable. And I think that that's a lot of times not the message that we hear. So we hear that we need to get support and we shouldn't be doing all of these activities in our business. And I agree to that to a certain extent, but you also need to look at who's on your team, what support do you have, what can you do in a way that you're not, if you're not tech savvy, then I wouldn't suggest setting up, landing pages, for example. That doesn't make any sense. And thinking about your launch plan and how it all fits together and how you can make the best choices in terms of investments of those expenses that go along with
I love that you said that because it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like in the sense of like, you do have to invest up front sometimes for a launch, right? Like that's part of it. On the other hand, it's easy to over-invest and then not really see the results on the back end. Like a lot of your launch money is going to pay for those expenses. So how do you find that happy medium where like you're investing in the areas that you absolutely non-negotiably need support in? And then in the other areas, where are you picking up the slack so that your goal at the end of this launch or your monetary goal is actually met, right? I totally agree with you too, that like sometimes we just got to like bootstrap some stuff ourselves at the beginning, which lets us go down that whole path that you were talking about, right? Which is like we launch once, then we launch better, then we launch best, right? So if we're willing to do some of that work ourselves on the front end, get it launched the first time, that like propels us to be able to hire more support next time, etc., right?
Right. And that's exactly how it works. So I have a client who is, she's a life coach, but she's amazing at graphics. So before she started her business, she was doing graphic design. And so she comes to the launch and she is totally it's important for her to make everything look really pretty. And so she worked on the workbook, she worked on the landing page, she worked on different design elements for social media. And that made sense for her because she was able just to bang it all out and be really proud and confident about what she was putting out in terms of the design. But she's not technically savvy, so she has a virtual assistant who helps her do that. She's not not maybe the best writer, or copywriting is a different skill set than what she has in terms of her writing ability. So she gets support there. And then when she's launched it, now she has proof and she can see that it works, and people have gone through it and they've been interested in it. And so now she can launch again. And she has launched again. And then it's, just a matter of testing and tweaking because she has all of these pieces of content that she knows has
I think
worked.
that's a really good point too.
And so the next time there's hardly the next time there's hardly any work for her, and then she's showing up and able to do it again and use it.
And you're not investing as much the second time, perhaps. So it can seem hard to invest the first time because you have less money, you haven't launched yet. But on the other hand, like that copy, she's not reinvesting in new copy. She's not reinvesting in new design work. Like all of that is done. So that's a really big deal too, is to remember that like sometimes what you're investing in is not just for this launch, it's for your future and subsequent launches, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's what I see in terms of clients. So maybe the first time they'll have, 8 people sign up. The next time they'll have 20, maybe 40. And that, when I've worked with someone over a number of years, that's exactly what's happened. So the first time the program itself might look a little bit different and they have 8 people in it. And I've had a client who that was her exact situation. So the first time that we launched was about 3 years ago, and she had 8 people in it. And then she launched it this past January and she had 84 people in it. And yeah, and what it is really is that she has grown her own reach. She's increased her email list. People know about the program now. She has a reputation. And so it's easy for her to show up and reuse some of these elements, because it's not necessarily that you need to go out and create. Sometimes it's that you need to warm up the audience you have and also bring more audience to the offers that you already have, because there's just not enough people.
Bring more audience to the offers you already have. That is powerful and that is important, right? I think some people take like what you're saying, like she could have taken that when she got 8 people to mean like only 8 people want it, right? And that would have been really challenging for her. Now she's launching to 80 plus people, and it was just because she brought more audience to that offer. So cool. I love that. Okay, so recap for us 1 through 5 really quick, and then tell everyone how they can find you, how they can get in touch with you, how they can get your hands and help on their launch.
Sure. So key 1 was with your offer. And so making sure that you're creating and testing your offer before you put it out there. And so that validation is key before you do too much work. The second key is what numbers are important in your launch. So obviously revenue and expenses are important in having a profitable launch, but also looking at the number of leads or the number of people on your email list or Facebook group, the number of people who are going to see your offer, and creating a goal that is realistic and reasonable within that. The third is having a plan. And so you want to make sure that you do have a plan. It's not something that you can jump into, but it isn't something that you need to take months or even weeks before you begin. So you want to begin now if you haven't already launched, or if you're planning a launch, you want to start now. The fourth was within the plan, you want to incorporate urgency. And urgency is a marketing strategy that doesn't need to be gross or icky, but it needs to be something where you give people a deadline and a reason of why they act now. And then the fifth key is looking at the exact skills that you have and the exact skills that you're going to need in order to pull off the launch, and realizing that one of the skills is actually the skill of launching itself. And in terms of where you can find me, so my website is emilykristofferson.com. And next week, I'm offering a free class, and it is which comes first, the launch or the list?
So good. I hear that question all the time, right? So good.
It's like the chicken and the egg. So you can go and sign up at emilykristofferson.com/launch or list. And you can also get a freebie. It's 30 ways to fill your next or your first webinar or teleseminar, which those are effective ways to either grow your list or your launch. And you can get that at emilykristofferson.com/30
Awesome. This was
ways.
So good, Emily. Thank you so much. Awesome. This was I will put those links in the Facebook comments, Facebook posts. What am I trying to say? Facebook posts where this video will also be linked. So feel free to check those out. And again, like if you have questions for Emily, post them below. Let her know. She's happy to answer them, and definitely sign up for a launcher list, because I feel like that is a question everyone has asked at some point in their entrepreneurial journey. So don't miss that. Thank you, Emily, for being here. We are so grateful for you and your launching wisdom. Hope you all have a good day. Bye.
Thank you so much, Lacey. Bye.